everybody, Gunnar here. Today we're going to tie something simple and fishy. Basically what you're going to need, we're going to do, this is some nice long supple bucktail fibers, which is going to be our tail section. And then we're going to basically run an EP craft fur brush straight up the body. It's going to build our bulk real quick. It's going to get nice length to it. What you're going to want to do is, this brush is about 3 inches long, so when you put in your bucktail, I guess we'll do it when we get there, but you want your bucktail at a certain length so that you get basically a good silhouette from the craft fur, so it all bleeds into each other, right? Simple stuff like that. And then we're going to put a craft fur wing on here. What I got in the vise right now is a 2/0 Attitude streamer hook from Partridge. It's a nice long shank thin wire hook, and then we're going to be pairing that with a 2/0 Predator stinger hook from Arex Hooks. It's almost got an identical shank length. It's a little bit thicker wire, right? It's a wide gap hook. It's going to help us keel, and they're just a super sharp, high quality hook. So that's what we're going to lead with. So we have almost identical hooks, but we have a thin wire in the back and a nice thick wire hook up front, kind of building our bulk and our taper. The front body is super simple, right? The back was a craft fur brush. The front is a craft fur brush paired with an EP sparkle brush. So those are the two things that you really want, that the fly is kind of based off of. It's the EP craft fur brush and then the EP sparkle brush, right? So those two brushes build up both the bodies, right? And then we're going to do another reverse craft fur wing, and then the head is going to be built out of Frankenfly monster dubbing. And we're just going to do a nice clean, simple, probably 2-stack dubbing head, put some nice eyes on it, and we'll probably do some epoxy work and call it a day. So the fly is fast, it's quick, it's lightweight. You know, you can cast it all day on an 8-weight, like no problem. It's about 6.5 inches long. It's not really designed as a purely pike fly. It's more of like it matches basically anything that a fish would eat. You know, I catch plenty of smallmouth on it. It's caught a ton of pike. It'd be, you know, it's just kind of like an everything size. A great fly to take trout fishing if you're hunting for hogs. So yeah, let's get tying. I'm currently working with a 100-strand gel spun thread from Vivas. We're going to take off probably 20 bucktail fibers. This bucktail is from Littlefield Farms, if you know what I'm saying. It's I got a buddy who gets me some deer tails after his family slays them down in Lower Michigan, and so I get some sweet grass-fed bucktail that's pretty high quality. So we're just going to take this, and basically the whole thing with the bucktail is I was tying some hollow flies and just using bucktails to tail, and I really like the movement. It's white, it's kind of translucent. We're going to be pairing it with some micro lateral line flash, and it gives you the stiffness and the length and the translucency, but it also carries that movement because of the taper of the natural fibers. So that's what that's all about. And we're carrying this, right, slightly longer than our craft fur brush, just slightly, so that we can build a good taper by palmering that brush, and it's going to bleed right into the bucktail fibers. Now when we tie this on, basically I'm going to keep it on top and on the sides. I'm not going to let it rotate all the way around because I don't want the hook bend to really get in the way here. And then I'm going to wrap that back and kind of close all those butts up. And you'll see, I guess I should have told you that, I didn't start at the rearmost point. I started maybe a hook eye in front of where I was going to tie it back, and that's so I can close this, right? I'm wrapping backwards right now, and I'm just going to close that with some light thread wraps. No tension, basically no tension. And the purpose is to just close that tail up so I don't have a whole bunch of flared bucktail, right, which doesn't really match the silhouette that I'm going for. So we're going to take 2 strands of that micro lateral line flash, right? Now this stuff, when you pull it around your thread, it kinks very easily. So when you wrap it around your thread, wrap it with very little tension, or else you'll put a little crease in it. And I'm just going to go ahead and trim these to different lengths right now. And then we're just going to tie that in 50-50, right? So light tension around the thread. Bring it right on top. And then I'm just going to spread it around the top of that bucktail and wrap it back. Sweet. I guess I don't need a whip finish. What am I doing? Now I'm going to come in, I'm going to coat this basically with some super glue, help basically secure all that from the pike teeth that will end up around the back of that hook. And then we're going to palmer, right? We're going to hackle this about 3.5 inch, 4 inch section that I pre-cut of the EP Craft fur brush. And then then we're going to do a reverse craft fur wing right on top. So let's get to it. So this EP Craft fur brush, right, I palmered that relatively aggressively, keeping a nice kind of wide gap between my wires. I'm not trying to build a super dense body in the back because I want a nice light tail that really allows that front hook to accelerate into a jerkbait action, right? And when you add a lot of water tension into a back hook, it basically just dulls that action down. And so we're creating a nice sparse light back hook. So yeah, that's why it's only the one brush instead of the two brushes, and it's palmered relatively aggressively so that it has basically sparse and light. So I just caught that exposed wire end, folded that back so it can't get pulled out of there, and then we're going to reverse craft fur only on top. And this is for the illusion of basically imitating bait fish. You know, we're going to put a nice dark back on this. And the craft fur is long enough that it's going to bleed again into this tail section, and it's going to help make that back hook, basically it's going to unify everything, kind of clean it up. And so yeah, we'll do that. Let's do that. This little stack is relatively sparse. I'm going to take out quite a bit of the underfur to help reduce any water tension that's going to be on that. So we just want basically the mid-length and long fibers. And then, so I trimmed it up, right? And I'm going to lay it right here on top. Pinch it with my fingers. Catch it 2 or 3 times. I'm going to wrap back maybe a hook eye. And then I'm going to draw those fibers straight back and put a little bullet on it. And that's going to help keep everything super secure right on top. Then I'm going to draw my thread up to the hook eye and throw a little whip finish in here. Sweet. So there you go. Craft fur just on top, bleeding into the bucktail. That EP brush has the EP fibers are in chartreuse and the craft fur is in white. So you have this kind of bright hot spot on the belly there, and then all those ends of that craft fur are bleeding into a nice fusiform taper. So I'm going to hit this head with some super glue. We're going to articulate this onto that 2-watt Ahrex Predator Stinger hook. I'm probably going to skip the articulation job, and when we jump back to, I'll be simultaneously palmering 2 brushes, right? So we're going to tie them in together. We're going to palmer them at the same time. It's an idea I got from a Rich Strolis video, his Chinese Dragon. And all I'm doing is putting the craft fur brush on top, right? So it's going to be the leading edge is craft fur. We're going to kind of bury and hide that flash underneath the craft fur. And yeah, then I'll stop you when we get there. But the beauty of that, the simultaneous palmer, like the flash brush, you'd think it wouldn't add a lot of bulk, but the fibers are relatively stiff, especially in the blended brushes. So this is like a UV blue, or a holographic blue, a holographic silver, and a silver or something. And I palmer it slightly denser, right? We didn't fill up the full hook shank, so it's a smaller distance because the hook shank lengths are almost the same. So it's a shorter distance, same size brush, but now we have twice the material. So it adds quite a nice bulk. It actually stays bulky in the water. It holds its profile really well, which is nice. Yeah, and it adds that flash into the front third, which is the widest part of the fish, and I really like having the flash up front, especially for triggering a bite up front and making sure you have a high hookup percentage. But yeah, we're going to reverse tie that craft fur wing on this one, right? We're going to do a slightly bigger, maybe 10 or 15% more craft fur, and we're going to leave in maybe 5% more underfur. So up here, right, when I cleaned out this craft fur, I grabbed up maybe a full inch or an inch and a half and cleaned out a lot of those shorter fibers. On this one, I'm keeping those shorter fibers in and maybe cleaned out the bottom half inch, right? So we have a little bit more density and a little bit more bulk. And that way we have a nice kind of forward taper with shorter fibers up front, right? You don't want just all long fibers because I want this to bleed into that dubbing head really cleanly. So again, we're going to put that straight on top and pinch it, throw a nice loose wrap and draw it straight down onto the hook. Like that, yeah, sure. Wrap back a hook eye, and then we're just going to draw that back and bullet it. Two micro lateral line scales, one on each side. We're going to cut them about an inch short off the end right away, just so that they're good for the proportions. And then we're going to go ahead and stack a dubbing head, right? And the dubbing head's easy. You just orient your fibers, you pinch and pull until they're all in the same direction. And then we're going to do this, I don't know, we're running out of room, but probably 2 stacks, really light, not a high density of dubbing. Pretty simple, right? Stack on top, stack on bottom, stack on top, stack on bottom. Basically 2 wraps under each, right? And now we got a lot of colors going on. This is a little crazy. But we're going to pick that out, fill this collar up, and we're going to try to get a nice clean separation of our colors. I'll probably comb it out. And then we're going to apply an 8mm 3D eye from Deer Creek. So we're basically just going to put a drop of gel super glue on the back of the eye, push it right up into this dubbing, right? The dubbing is stacked vertically, right? And I'm going to try to keep the sides relatively sparse so that that gel super glue soaks into these thread wraps and can attach to the hook, and hopefully, well, I doubt it'll go all the way through, but we're going to try to secure that as much as possible with that gel, which is more or less going to be temporary because we're going to coat and bullet the front of this with a UV epoxy so that basically the eyes stay on forever, or as close to as possible. Eyes are in place, good to go. Coffee's refilled, good to go. Hot, good to go. Anyway, so before I trim this head down, which is going to help reduce a little bit of the friction, and it's going to help get us basically the contour that we want for the epoxy head, so that's a little bit easier to apply everything. But the head is already vertically displaced, right? The way we stacked the dubbing was vertical. The way we put the eyes on was to get that vertical displacement, so the head is elongated and acts like a sail and cuts through the water, right? Which is why it's also important that the back hook is sparse and light. But what I want to talk about is that Arax hook, right? the Ahrex hook having that thick wire up front, the thicker wire hook, the thin wire hook in the back is going to move a lot more freely because there's less mass back there. But the thick wire hook up front is going to help it to keel, right? And when you tie a vertically displaced fly, well, it doesn't work if it's not keeled. It'll just roll on its side. But when you keel it and then you pull it through the water, then it'll dig, right? An unkeeled fly will float up on the side and the action's kind of random. But a heavy keeled fly is going to dig left to right, and it's going to have belly wobble. It's really good stuff. So thick wire, predator stinger up front. So that's what I wanted to say. And then we're just going to take some scissors, right? We're going to pick out this dubbing just a little bit along the bottom and top, and we're going to contour the eyes up towards the hook so that we have a relatively, we're going to reduce the friction, right, so that that fly can accelerate into that jerk motion. We don't want to slow it down too much. So we're just going to come up at like a 45, and then we'll bleed it into the hook eye. Oh, that is awesome. So that's what you ended up with, right? Instead of all this bulk up here, you basically get the same silhouette, but with less material, right? And this is where that having a high quality dubbing, that alpaca-based Frankenfly dubbing, if you mess this up, if you cut it down a little bit too much, although the eyes are already glued on, but you can pick it out and kind of save your mistake there. So it's a little bit more forgiving just because it has a lot more of that kind of under fur wool-like property to it. It's really easy to pick out and clean up if you trim it too much. So we cut that down, throw her back in the vise, and then for durability purposes only, right? Basically this fly is fishy. It's good to go right here, right now. If you don't have the UV stuff, don't worry about it. If you use a high quality super glue, which I'm trying to find right now, from what I've read or searched, tear mender seems to be one of the best materials for attaching eyes because it kind of turns into like an elastic thing, and the eyes, they hold a lot better. So if you're only going to put eyes on without the epoxy, go ahead and I would try tear mender, yeah. But what I'm going to do so that these eyes never come off of here, I'm just going to build an epoxy cone right basically over the top of the eyes and around the front dubbing. And I'm going to use a light, like a flex, a UV flex or a flow or whatever brand you have. I'm going to use the lightest resin possible. It's going to soak up into the dubbing, and then I'm going to cure that so I have a nice firm dubbing base, right? That's going to be basically half dubbing, half epoxy. And then I'm going to coat that with a slightly thicker resin, right? Just so we have a little bit of increased strength. And I'm going to bleed that resin up into the hook eye and up over the top of each eye so that we have a solid UV cone so that that head stays perfectly intact for, 20 fish. So that's the plan. So there you got it. Check that thing out. So yeah, a weightless, kind of hovering super jerk fly. Super jerk. Maybe I'll call it the super jerk. Does anybody have a fly named the super jerk? Because then I can come up with the jerk and the jerk junior and the micro jerk and the triple jerk. It'll just be a whole bunch of series of jerk flies. But, so this fly has gone through a lot of stages kind of in the past month and a half, 2 months now. Started off single hooked, started off with a Norbert Renard style whip tail with, titanium wire and rabbit zonkers, and then I took all that off, and I've tried it with wiggle tails, and I've tried it with the Flyman shrimp crayfish tails, a diving kind of weighted jig, keeled jigging lip, which I'm still working on that one. That one's a pretty cool idea. But that's where this came from, and it's very similar to an Oscar Hagelin fly, the cream soda, and he's got a really cool video series going on right now with fly fishing the Ozarks. So I don't know when that one's supposed to be released, the cream soda, but keep your eyes out. It's they're basically this one, the super jerk. We'll call it the super jerk. The super jerk and the cream soda are both kind of synthetic based jerk flies with craft fur wings and dubbing heads. So I got the bucktail tail and the brushwork and that stuff, but I'm excited to see his pattern too. So yeah, keep your eyes out for that. So weightless jerk flies are legit. Check them out, tie it up, fish it. This one's kind of a crazy color combo, but I kind of like it. So yeah. Oh, and if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations. No, but seriously. So it's, again, right, it's about 6.5 inches long, just shy of 7 inches. It's not super big, but I catch a ton of pike on it. And I got a lot of people that don't like 2 hooks for pike flies, and that's cool. A 35 millimeter shank off the back is almost the same proportions that we have going on, right? So Flyman 35 millimeter articulated shank is what I would just tag off the end, or you can put that one in front, whatever you like to do with your hooks. But I fish it with 2 hooks, and I pinch the barbs down. And I've never had an issue pike fishing with pinched barbs. Like, you never lose fish. These are wide gapped hooks. Like, I mean, it would have to shake off, you know, a full, almost half an inch of hook to get that out of there. If you fight it with constant pressure, you're good to go. And that way, if you hook it deep or something with that articulated back hook or something like that, it should just pop out. So I haven't had any issues yet, and I like having that back hook for smallmouth or brown trout or whatever you decide to fish it for. So yeah, tie one up. Let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.